Right, just so you know before the main part of this video, I may be sitting in front of some funny lines. I may also have a postscript about some funny lines.
You'll just have to watch till the end, won't you?
Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. My name is Paul, I'm also called Knick-Knack. I'm the brains behind Knick-Knack's Daily Teaser, which is a fun series of brainy teaser quizzes. I'm also the brains behind Knick-Knack's Old Peculiar, the world's most boringly repetitive blog that I'm surprised you haven't heard of yet. Go look it up for me. I'll try and put the link up there to it, if possible, or at least to the teasers. I try and do movie reviews as well, and I try and talk about TV shows I've been watching. I will put links to those up if I can, and I will also link into my tip jar. If you're feeling generous and like what you see tonight, your appreciation is appreciated. Let's try and move on, though. I've mentioned that I talk about TV shows, and just recently I've been watching the third series of For All Mankind. I'm watching the next episode tomorrow night on Sunday the 5th. Last night I saw the third episode of Star Trek Picard's last season, called 17 Seconds. And there's two things. One, I was wondering why it was called 17 Seconds. Two, I wanted you to know what I thought of the episode. Episode 3, 17 Seconds, opens with a summary of earlier episodes, and then moves to show us the USS Titan taking desperate evasive manoeuvres to get away from the Shrike, the warship, and very suspiciously Romulan-looking warship, commanded by Vadic, Amanda Plummer. It shows us Jack, Ed Spaliers, and Beverly Gates McFadden heading for sickbay, where at least one of the Titan's crew seems willing to blame Jack for the damage that's being done. Back on the bridge, things are looking equally as desperate as the Titan's warp drive has been damaged under continual fire from the Shrike. The only thing keeping the Titan from being destroyed is hiding deeper in the nebula. Post-titles were shown a flashback to the time many years earlier when Captain Riker, Jonathan Frakes, and Admiral Picard, Captain Stewart, are celebrating the birth of Riker's son, Thaddeus, and sees Riker telling the Admiral that the 17-second turbolift trip from the bridge to sickbay for the longest 17 seconds of his life, which answers that question. Back in the present day and with the Titan's sensors down, Captain Shaw, Todd Stashwick, is concerned enough about the Shrike to have junior crewmen watching out for it from the Titan's back windows, and to make sure that his senior crew gets some rest, as they've just pulled 36-hour shifts. That gives the ship's pilot, Ensign Sidney LaForge, Ashley Sharp Chestnut, a chance to check in with the confined 7 of 9, who's frustrated by being stuck in her quarters. It also gives Picard and Riker a similar chance to get off the bridge. Picard wants to have a long talk with Beverly, whilst Riker wants to have a chat with Jack. Dr. Beverly Crusher, has a lot to say to the Admiral, especially about his son Jack. Now, what did I make of this little lot? What did I make of 17 Seconds? For a very minor first point, I've got my answer as to why it's called 17 Seconds. It's a line of Riker's from the flashback early in the episode telling us how long it took him to get from the Titan's bridge to sickbay where his son was born. It's something that's paralleled later in the episode, where Picard has to visit his son Jack after Jack is critically injured, but still together enough to work out a few clues about how they're being traced by the Shrike. The episode itself is superb. Way back in the day, way back when the day was the day and not late as night, way back in the day, many episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation would have an A and B storyline. The main A storyline would be slightly darker than the secondary B storyline, or the B storyline would be more comedic, however you want to look at it. Or, occasionally, like with one particular episode I have in mind, would be on a sort of a tonal par. That best episode, that classic episode that I could think of, was of course the also classic Darmok. Picard is struck on a planet facing off against an invisible monster but he's with a friendly alien, a Temerian, whose language he can't speak, let alone communicate in, or let alone translate. The universal translators can't recognise it. Whilst all of that is going on, Data and Council Troy are trying to figure out the alien's language before the captain and his newfound friend get eaten. 17 Seconds has a similar or a broadly similar A and B structure. But unlike Darmok, it's weaving two, at least in this episode, it's weaving two episode plot threads together. One that follows the Titan as they try and fight or hide as needed from the Shrike and try and work out how it's following them. The other is following Raffi, Michelle Hurd, and Wolf, Michael Dillon, as they hunt for a human gangster connected to stolen weapons used to attack a Starfleet base. It is, for me, reassuring to see a familiar TNG, Next Generation structure. It's familiar and you kind of know where you're heading with it. You know what you're watching. You know it's going to flip from here to here and back here and then back again. You can see, if you know the show, it's easy enough to follow if you don't know the show, but it's also reassuring to see if you're familiar with some of the older Next Generation episodes. 17 Seconds itself is also giving us quite a lot of red meat. It shows us the destruction of the Starfleet recruitment base in a new light, when we see that it's been destroyed by exactly the same kind of portal weapon the Shrike uses on the Titan. It's a device that lets the Shrike move the Titan from going out of the nebula all the way back in from another direction. It's in much the same way that it uses the portal weapons to destroy the base, by literally opening a portal underneath the building and dropping it onto another part of the city the base is part of. We have a pair of interweaved plots complemented by some very fine performances and direction. Jonathan Frakes is creditable as Captain Riker. I don't know if it's his best performance, but he's been an actor long enough to do well at his job. And do well at his job while he's also directing this episode and making a damn good job of it, as far as I can see, in addition to his acting job. If he does drop a ball, it's not a ball I saw him drop, either directing or acting. And I'm not particularly worried. He's done double duty in this kind of episode too many times for me to point at a scene or a bit of directing to say that he's done one or the other job badly. He's equally comfortable and equally good as both. One thing I have noticed about the cast of The Next Generation, which is possibly what I think this series of Star Trek Picard is kind of a sequel to. One thing I've noticed about the cast of The Next Generation over the years is that, like the cast in any long-running drama, is that they can wander back years after they played their character and play them with very little trouble. That is certainly true of Michael Dillon, the ultimate in comedic straight men. That character is Wolf. He's back, he's here, and it's like 30 years haven't gone past. The only thing seemingly different is he seems to be calmer, is he seems to be cooler, and of course he's now got grey hair. And I think it's Dawn's experience as an actor and capabilities as an actor and as playing a specific character and playing that character in different crews shows. It's good and it's good to watch. The Son of Moog is back, is looking good, and he's paired with the other star of the show, Michelle Hurd's Raffi Musica, and I've always felt she is literally the star of Picard. The two of them, I've seen the two of them being interviewed together, and the two actors look like they've had a hell of a blast. get on very well, and seem to be a good team, if you will. Raffaella, if you wolf, is the most watchable character in 17 Seconds, going from existential rehab crisis to the bad cop half of a good cop, bad cop pairing, the like of which Star Trek hasn't seen for some time. Oh, sorry, hang on, just where are we now? There we are. I'm sorry, but like I say, it's a good cop, bad cop that they haven't seen for some time. This show has a heavyweight cast, a heavyweight ensemble, and some heavyweight stars. It's got the name Picard over the door, but Michelle Hurd is still, as far as I'm concerned, and from where I'm sitting, is still the star of the show. And what's more, they've given the scriptwriters have found an interesting way of giving Raffi and Hurd much more screen time, and to my mind, that is also the good. We've got fantastic performances, we've got fantastic writing, and we've got something of a twist. As 17 Seconds tells us exactly who else seems to be involved with the plot that Raffi, Wolf, Picard, and the crew of the Titan are battling. I'm not this week going to tell you who or what makes an appearance in this episode, but it's sufficient to say that it's a very old foe. It's one Wolf in particular knows well, has made an appearance in this episode. Whether they're working with Vatic or not, it's a whole other episode, and I suspect that episode might be next week's no-win scenario. Just as a last word, or possibly a side word, you are possibly aware I've covered a lot of Star Trek over the past few years, including Star Trek Discovery, the series whose release back in 2017 generated enough new interest in the Star Trek franchise to kickstart interest in other potential series. Picard itself, alongside Lower Decks, Star Trek Prodigy, and Star Trek Strange New World, their interest in those series has been generated, I think, by Discovery. And all of those latter series are doing well. Sadly, though, it's been announced that the 5th series of Star Trek Discovery, due to air in 2024, is to be the show's last. Budget reasons have been cited by some as an influencing factor. I have to be honest and say I'm a little conflicted. I often found the series could be a little too right on, a little bit too evangelically progressive for my taste sometimes. Not that reminding people that diversity exists is a bad thing. No, it's not. It needs saying sometimes. We need reminding diversity is there, that people different to us are there and are capable of their jobs and have feelings and opinions as valid as our own. It's just that being preached at, which is how Discovery comes across sometimes, isn't necessarily to some folks' taste. And I think Chibnall's era of Doctor Who has done that as well. It's a little preachy sometimes. With that said, Discoveries and coming to an end is still a loss. Dr. Culper, Wilson Crone, had just started warming up in Series 3. His husband, Tom Stamets, played by Anthony Rapp, is a likeable, watchable character. We cannot have enough of Jet Reno. She's the Michelle Hurd of the series, played by Tig Notaro. David Ajala, again, is an utter Michelle Hurd level star of the show. The 32nd century background, or the 32nd century Federation background, has not been explored enough. And frankly, Sonequa Martin Green as Captain Burnham is possibly one of the most regal captains the franchise has ever been blessed with. Losing the series may be a good thing if it allows money and resources to be spread amongst other members of the franchise. It's certainly, I think, a bad thing because it puts people out of jobs and stops exploration of another part of the background universe. Like I say, I am sad to sit here that it's going, but I suspect and I hope Star Trek Discovery will be watched and talked about for a very long time to come. There's good in there somewhere. Let's close up this post, shall we? I have thoroughly enjoyed 17 Seconds, and I thoroughly suggest you go and see it. It might make more sense to watch it as part of the series. It is episode 3 after all, but the performances, especially from Heard and Dawn, make it very watchable on its own. I am going to be watching the next episode For All Mankind tomorrow night on Sunday the 5th of March. I am going to have my written video reviews up on Monday the 6th of March. But I'm going to be watching No-Win Scenario, episode 4 of this last series of Star Trek Picard on the 10th of March, next Friday. I'll have my reviews up on Saturday, and I hope you'd care to join me and read what I thought, because believe you me, I'm hoping for a bloody good episode. It needs to be to follow 17 Seconds. Just as a point, Raffi's line, I think I feel my chamomile tea going back up, is hysterical, and it's on a par with Wolf's beheadings are on Wednesdays. You really need to see this episode. It makes a lot more sense when you hear them in context.